Hey everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm really excited because today I'm going to be chatting with you about why self-care can feel like such a burden. This video is a little bit different because I polled my community on Instagram saying, hey, does self-care feel like a burden to you? And most of my audience said, yes, it feels absolutely burdensome. And I wasn't shocked actually, because I know that because of the way that we approach a lot of things in our society, the way we're taught to approach habits and practices with such rigidity and perfectionism, and when we don't do it, we feel like a failure. That is so intertwined and woven into our psyche in Western culture that I wasn't surprised, but I wanted to know more. So I asked, hey, what makes self-care feel like such a burden to you? And I got some really amazing and insightful responses. And so today I'm going to just dive into one of the responses. And this is going to be a video series because I really want to take the time to respond to these very insightful responses in a nuanced way, because I think that the shame and guilt that we as women feel when we try to take care of ourselves is valid and legitimate. And the response to that needs to be nuanced because it's a lot more complicated than, hey, you just need to manage your time better, or maybe you need a better planner, because we all know, if we're being honest with ourselves, that there is misogyny and capitalism and patriarchal ideals at play here, and that is why it's so hard. So I'm going to be sharing my own journey, my own experience, hopefully help those of you who feel burdened by self-care, because self-care saved my life. Honestly, if I'm going to try to wrap it up, it really has been way more powerful in my healing journey than I realized. Again, I have c-PTSD. I survived an abusive childhood, and one of the many things that self-care does for me, having a sustainable, authentic self-care practice, is it validates my worthiness. And it also helps to keep me functioning, and it helps me prevent burnout, and it helps me to show up for my family and my life and my goals and my dreams. Whereas before I had a self-care practice, I was constantly burned out and nearing hospitalization. I really believe in the power of self-care, but I also know that it's taken me a lot of inner work and a lot of deprogramming my mind from Western hustle culture and productivity obsession in order to get to that place. And so that's kind of why I want to make this a video series. So if that's something that you're interested in, please make sure that you subscribe to my channel and hit the bell icon. I think you're going to really like this series. So let's dive in. The question I asked was, what makes self-care feel burdensome to you? And the response I got, one of them was cost of therapy, childcare, finding childcare I trust, and shame because I need more than my husband. And I'm going to spend this whole video just responding to this question, and I'm going to break it into 3 parts: childcare, therapy, and shame. When it comes to childcare, I have to say I absolutely 100% relate to this. Actually, my husband and I just found someone to come and watch our kids for 5 hours a week after almost 2 years of having no childcare. It's very hard. And even then, I still question at least once a week if we should even have this person come and watch our kids, because it's expensive. It's a lot. And this person's giving us a deal. They know my family. They're very kind. They're amazing with my kids. But it is hard to not look at that money and think, oh, I should be using it for something else. I should be saving it. I shouldn't be blah, 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 blah. So I just want you to know that it's normal for those thoughts to come up. They're very common. I tried hiring childcare through an agency and it didn't go well multiple times. So I just want to say, I hear you, and your struggle with finding affordable, trustworthy childcare is valid. And if you live in America, I also relate to you. I live in California, so there's a little bit more options here, but it's very hard to find good childcare in America, especially affordable childcare. And I just want to let you know, I used to be a political activist. I worked in the legislative process, and there are several policy proposals right now going through, making its way through Congress to make childcare more affordable. Do a little bit more research on that, because you want to make sure that you're calling your Congress people, your representatives, and saying, hey, I'm expecting you to vote for this. And that is one of the many reasons why political activism and politics and government are related to mental health. Because when parents can't have childcare, it causes so much strain on our relationship. It causes strain on our ability to have a good quality of life. It's just needed so that we can go to work. I heard someone say that childcare is infrastructure, similar to roads and bridges to help people to get to work. We need childcare to help people to get to work. So it's extremely essential, and especially in American culture, we have acted as if it doesn't really matter, because we have relied on this very old patriarchal idea that women will just do the childcare forever. And we know that in most states, you need 2 incomes to survive. So I could go on and on about that, but that's not what this video is about. But I wanted to express that because I think a lot of people disconnect the fact that mothers can't take care of themselves as much as we need without that support. I know some people are just like, well, just have your husband, like your partner, do the other half. And it's like, if you live in the same world I'm living in, your partner, who's the breadwinner, is working ridiculous hours to try to keep a roof over our heads. So it's really not that simple. And so I just want you to know and hear and see that I feel you on that. And it is very complicated. So that's why the next thing I wanted to talk with you about is that while you're waiting for enough money, enough resources, or the right childcare provider to come around, which by the way, please don't give up on that. Please, please, please don't give up. Just keep searching for a solution. But in the meantime, I wanted to share with you a couple of the self-care activities that I practiced when I didn't have childcare because I couldn't afford it and I couldn't find someone trustworthy to watch my kids. Here are the things that I did because at the end of the day, we need to keep you functioning, surviving, and hopefully even thriving while you are waiting for better solutions to come and, you know, searching for those solutions, but also not just like sitting there suffering while you're waiting for those solutions to come. So the first thing I did, and this is kind of ironic because everyone always says people think self-care is all about bubble baths. But actually my first self-care practice that I really stuck with was taking a warm bath almost every single night. And why was this something that I could stick with? It was accessible. I didn't have to drive anywhere. I didn't have to go anywhere. I had a bathtub in my apartment. Number two, it's almost free. I'm already paying for the water that's running in my apartment. I'm already paying for the electricity that heats that water. And I only ever spent a couple of bucks to buy some Epsom salts from the grocery store, which are great for aching muscles. You just put like a cup of Epsom salts into your bath and it's very soothing. And I would buy very affordable essential oils off the grocery store shelves. Love that. Got some lavender, got some eucalyptus, combined them. It was like very enjoyable. And that only cost me like less than $10. And even before I did that, I just sat in the hot water. That still does you so much good. And then as I kind of kept going with this practice, I added in a really snazzy, expensive $15 candle from the Chip and Joanna Gaines section at Target. So it's pretty fancy. And then I also started adding in like snacks. Like I would get myself dark chocolate. I would buy berries to put in my water to make it feel like a spa. Or sometimes I would get a $3 bunch of eucalyptus from Trader Joe's and hang it in my shower to just make it feel more luxurious because I deserve it. And that's what's so crazy is it started out with just me sitting in hot water, like not buying anything. And then slowly as I started to continue this practice day after day, I started to see how I could add more things to it that were affordable, that were within my budget when I couldn't afford childcare. It's like a chocolate bar cost $2, eucalyptus cost $3. And I didn't do all this at one time. It was kind of like every week I did something different for myself. And if you're not a bath person, maybe it's taking a really hot shower, but keeping your light off and just having a candle on so that it's low light in there, which by the way is very helpful in soothing your nervous system to kind of take away some of that stimulation that you're getting from the light and the fan and all of that stuff, and just tune in to the sound of the water and to become more mindful. This is something that I'm obsessed with because it became something that I was able to look forward to. So every single day as a mom of 2 kids with a newborn and a 2-year-old, it just always got hard. Every day at some point it always got hard, usually around 2-3 o'clock when I still was waiting for many more hours. My husband would come home 7, sometimes 8. He traveled a lot for work, especially on those days and weeks where he would be gone for the whole week because of traveling. I just looked forward to that bath. It was like, it was something that it was a light at the end of the tunnel and I could look forward to it. And I live with chronic pain as part of my PTSD, and my muscles and back and neck would just hurt so bad throughout the day, no matter what I did. And knowing that I had that Epsom salt lavender bath waiting for me at the end of the day after the kids went to bed, it was perfect. Also because even when I had a breastfeeding baby and I put her down at 8 o'clock, I knew she wouldn't be up until about 10 for her next feeding. And so I knew I had a solid 2-hour chunk with which to take care of myself, to give back to myself after pouring out all day long. And I know that some people are like, yeah, but after the kids go to bed, that's when I clean up the toys, I wipe the counters, I take the trash out, I do the dishes. I did the same thing. until I almost completely destroyed myself and burned myself out by not giving myself a single break. Think about it. You've been going all day long with the kids. Maybe you've been up since 5 or 6 a.m. So by 8 p.m. at night, you've been going for 14, sometimes 15 hours. Even people who work 12-hour shifts get a lunch break, and you're not going to give yourself a break. So I have to tell you that something has to give. You have to give something up. And whether that is having a perfectly clean kitchen at night, I recognize that you need certain things in the morning, but I made a deal with myself that I would only wash the dishes I absolutely needed for the morning. And then I would do the rest of those dishes in the morning after breakfast and before we went to the playground. Obviously, adjust as needed for your circumstances. The moral of the story, the message here is at some point you have to put yourself on your to-do list and you need to cross other things off that aren't absolutely essential, because your well-being, I feel like we treat ourselves like we're just never supposed to break, like we're these unbreakable human beings that never need to break. But you are breakable. And I don't say that to you to discourage you or to be doom and gloom or to sound negative. I want to remind you of your vulnerability and your humanity that I feel that in our society we just don't talk about. We all act like we have this armor that is impenetrable and unbreakable, and that's just not true. And then so many of us are breaking and dying inside behind an image that we're okay. And I give you permission to acknowledge when you're not okay, to acknowledge that every day at some point you need a break, and that is totally valid and totally normal and totally okay. So that's number one. That's the main one, is taking that bath, whatever that version of that is for you, and knowing that in order to do that for yourself and give yourself that 2-hour break, it's going to require that you let go of some things and that you just be okay that in this season, you're deciding to have a less than perfect kitchen or a continuous, constant, never-ending pile of laundry on the couch because you don't want to spend 2 hours holding that when you could be resting your bones for 2 hours. So you're giving some things up, but you are getting so much in return. And I have to say that when I switched that and I thought I would be so miserable waking up to a dirty kitchen, I woke up refreshed because I took care of myself. I took a break and I was able to approach the messy dishes in the morning being like, yeah, I've got energy for this, because I don't feel like I've just been on a constant hamster wheel of pouring out all the time. And so that is why it's so important to focus on what we can do. And that's like really the main thing I want you to do here as you continue to search for childcare solutions and waiting for your resources to get a little bit better so that you have some support there, is to focus on what you can do. Because when you focus on everything that you can't have because of a lack of childcare, you're going to start to feel depressed. You're going to start to feel angry. You're going to start to feel resentful and frustrated. And you're also going to miss out on all the things that you can do right now and all the amazing things that are happening in front of you, like the fact that maybe you get to witness your children really like growing up. And I'm not saying that that's fun all the time, but it is special. And I think that when we focus on what we can do, we take care of ourselves in the ways that are possible instead of fixating on all the things that aren't possible, we really help ourselves. Another self-care activity that I did that was a lifesaver for me when I didn't have childcare was exercising every day for 10 minutes. And I know at first it's like 10 minutes a day. Like, is that even can you call that a workout? And I would argue, yes, you can call it a workout, because when you move your body intentionally, it doesn't need to be HIIT. It doesn't need to be, for those of you who don't know, HIIT is high intensity interval or something. It's a very hard workout with a lot of sweating and burpees and things like that. It doesn't need to be that. I started doing 10 minutes of just stretching, not even yoga. By the way, yoga and stretching are different. Yoga is a little bit more challenging. I did 10 minutes of stretching every day, worked my way up to yoga, worked my way up to like some Pilates, but I'm still in the Pilates yoga realm. And it made a huge difference. Let me explain why. Number one, I started to become okay with imperfection. My kids would be jumping on me, whatever. I started to zone in on the benefits that just showing up at my yoga mat had for me, rather than fixating on having the perfect space, the perfect amount of time, burning the right amount of calories, doing the perfect workout, the right moves, all of these things that we tell ourselves that we need in order to have a good workout. And I want you to question that. Like, who told you that a workout is only good if you burn a certain amount of calories? Probably diet culture, and they're making a lot of money off of you by making you feel like you need to be perfect in order for something to matter. And I want you to know that your workouts don't need to be a certain criteria for them to matter. I have found in my own personal experience, I receive a lot of the physical and mental benefits of exercising, even for just 10 minutes a day. And by showing up to the mat just for 10 minutes a day, alongside my kids, alongside whatever mood they were having that day, it helped me to start to release perfectionism, which is super helpful for me. I don't know about you, but I'm a recovering perfectionist. I used to have debilitating perfectionism. And by showing up to do this workout, messy and imperfect, and I used to do competitive dance. So like, I understand the struggle of comparing yourself to what you used to be able to do, but you're no longer measuring yourself against past you, because you're not past you anymore. You're current you. And it's important to meet current you with understanding and respect and compassion, and to value yourself right now where you're at, because you need to function and thrive today, not compare yourself and beat yourself up in comparison to who you were before. It really helped in that realm. I didn't expect how much working out for 10 minutes a day, no matter the circumstances, was going to wire my brain to be more okay with imperfection, but it really did. And it helped me to build self-trust. It became this promise that I kept to myself. I used to think that we could only build self-trust if we, accomplish some massive feat. Like, say you really want to write a book and you are like, when I write this book, I'm all of a sudden going to prove to myself that I can do the things I say I'm going to do. I can show up for the commitments I say I'm committed to. Turns out that the opposite is also true. If you tell yourself that you want to drink this much water every day and you do that, it builds that self-trust. If you tell yourself you want to exercise for 10 minutes a day and you do that, it builds that self-trust. It's like, whether or not the thing that you do for yourself is massive or small, what matters is that you show up for it. And when you build self-trust, the woman that you become when you trust yourself is a woman who just makes better decisions. She treats herself better. She values herself more. She starts to show up and keep promises in other areas of her life. It's truly amazing. And that's why when I start talking about how much I love self-care, people are like, oh my God, self-care is such a burden. It's so much. I understand, because I know where I used to come from, thinking self-care is for rich people. Self-care is inaccessible. Self-care is for people who have money. Self-care is for people who have nannies. That's how I used to approach self-care. And what I have learned finally now, after having practiced and developed a sustainable practice for myself over the last 3 years, so please know that it takes time, because there's a lot of unlearning that has to happen to make it this way. I'm like, wow, it's really transformed me. It's really changed me. It's made me someone who trusts myself, who loves herself and values herself, and is able to roll with the punches, whether that's a kid screaming for a snack when you're in the middle of a yoga pose and you just have to tell your kid, you're gonna have to wait for 5 more minutes. Mommy's still in the middle of a workout. And it's like, everybody survives. And it just shows me that I can stop everything else, take care of myself, and the whole world still lives on. And I think that is a huge value and lesson in and of itself. A few more things that you can do if you don't have childcare is, of course, watching a movie. My husband and I had a weekly date night where we would watch a movie, and you don't have to do this with your partner, and honestly, whenever you have to do something with your partner, you might be watching a movie you don't really love because they don't want to watch the rom-com that you want to watch or the baking show that you want to watch. And not only would I just watch a movie, I would make sure that when I go to the grocery store that week, I actually put on the list a snack I want. On top of the Oreos and the goldfish crackers that your kids want, you can make sure that you get that pint of ice cream that you really like and that maybe your kids don't love, but you like, and you make sure that's on the list, because you're going to have that treat when you have your solo date movie night. And I also just have to say, a lot of people tend to think that watching a movie is just like numbing out, or it doesn't matter. And I graduated from film school, and I have to tell you that films and TV, they're works of art that involve hundreds of people and millions of dollars, and they can be quality. And are there some trashy things out there that are kind of like mind-numbing? Of course, just like in any medium, there is. But don't let that idea that, oh, you're putting your feet up and you're not like painting or using modeling clay or you don't need to do that. You can do whatever fills you up and is accessible to you while you don't have childcare. Another thing that I'm loving right now is I've signed up for weekly dance classes that are at night or on the weekend, so that I know my husband's gonna be here with the kids and I can leave the house, so trading off works. And then one last thing I wanted to share is painting your nails. If that's something that you like, the tools to give yourself a manicure are very inexpensive. And I don't know why I thought they were really expensive, but I finally purchased cuticle clippers and some different things like nail cutters and whatever. And my favorite color polish, and I would put on a podcast or some music, and I would do this after my kids went to bed and really take the time to soak my fingers in water and put cuticle oil on them. And it's just like a very mindful process when you really take the time to just sink into it and enjoy it and listen to your favorite podcast uninterrupted, or an audiobook. I love listening to audiobooks. And every time I would look at my fingernails throughout the week after doing that for myself, it was like a reminder that I took care of myself, that I took time to not just be a doer, to not just be someone that's always doing, like doing the dishes, cleaning the floor, scrubbing the microwave, like, oh wow, I took 2 hours to do my nails, and that's a beautiful thing. And it reminds me that I'm a human being existing to enjoy this life, not just slave away and produce all the time. Okay, so the next section I want to break down is therapy and the struggle that this person was mentioning with cost. And yes, therapy is extremely inaccessible and it's very expensive. I really love following the holistic psychologist on Instagram. Her name is Dr. Nicole LaPera, and she actually did a whole Instagram stories like content all on how the one-on-one therapy model is not sustainable for the therapist or for the client. It's just they have to charge a lot in order to make it worth their while, and that means it's inaccessible for the therapist, the patient, and it's not like traditional medicine where you go in for one doctor's visit, right, and you get a prescription, and you're like, oh great, I'm good, I have my prescription, I have my antibiotics, I'm done. Therapy is like a lifelong, like healing our trauma. Working on our mental challenges is a lifelong thing. And so not everybody can afford to go every single week for 5 years. It's just not sustainable and it's not accessible. And so I first just want to validate that. And I also want to say that there are a lot more options out there when it comes to low cost or no cost mental health support than you realize. And I'm saying this because I thought that all there was either you have the money and the health insurance to go to therapy or you don't. What I didn't realize is that there's actually a lot of nonprofits that offer what's called sliding scale, which is where they charge you based on your income and sometimes don't charge you anything at all. And I also want to like caveat there, because I know that there have been social workers that offer that to me, but with 2 kids and I needed childcare, they're like, oh, sliding scale only costs $40. And they weren't thinking about childcare. And I would say, yeah, but once I hire childcare, this is going to cost me about $100 a week, and I don't even have a spare $30 in my budget right now. Another thing that happens is a lot of times when they're evaluating your income, they look at just your income and they don't recognize the fact that you have maybe a lot of student loan debt and things like that. So there can be problems there. I don't want to act like that's just like a one-stop shop solution, but I remember going to a social worker and saying, is there anything, any sort of therapy program that offers childcare? And she found one. After I was very specific and asked for what I needed, she found one. And I live in California, and I do know that we're very progressive when it comes to a lot of these things. So I know this isn't something that everybody has. But the thing I'm trying to pass along to you is the fact that social workers can be a great connector of information between people and organizations. And I didn't even know what a social worker was. Like, you know, when you see somebody whose name has LCSW after it, that stands for licensed clinical social worker. And I only just learned of that 2 years ago. And social workers work in clinics, they work in hospitals, they work in social service agencies. You can Google social service agency near me and see what pops up. But the point is that there's actually a lot more social supports out there than we realize. And I will tell you why. Well, my theory, because I've asked them, why does this happen? And I've like directly asked these people, like, why do they not promote their services more? I also worked at a nonprofit for over 1.5 years, and we worked with other nonprofits. And let me tell you something, after 18 months of working in that space, nonprofits do not fund marketing, not as much as they should. A lot of them don't fund it at all. And I don't know if it's because they don't see the value in it, or because the people who get this money are usually the people who specialize in whatever they're doing, but they're not marketers. And so they don't understand that it's important. So the reason why you don't know about all these nonprofits is because they don't pay for marketing. And what I learned working in that space is that there's actually hundreds of nonprofits that are very well funded to provide low cost or no cost services to people, but we just don't know about it because they don't pay for marketing. So I hope that gives you some place to start, because I don't want you to give up. There are solutions out there. And with the pandemic, It's now becoming more normalized for therapy to be offered over the phone or online, which is making it even easier, because where before I had to find a babysitter before I was able to go to therapy, and I would rush there because I only wanted to pay the babysitter for 2 hours instead of 3 hours. And that's the kind of financial situation I was in. And now I can put on PJ Masks on Netflix for my kids and step into my room and open my laptop and go to therapy every week without having to pay for childcare. And that is incredible and it's amazing. And a lot more therapy practices are allowing that. And I think that's awesome. And then of course, there's the two very well known, tons of marketing behind these brands of Talkspace and BetterHelp. I'm not an affiliate and I'm not sponsored by them, but I've used Talkspace for a little bit. I found it easy to use and really accessible. And so, yeah, look into those because there have been a lot of celebrities making massive donations to Talkspace and BetterHelp to provide free therapy sessions to people. So don't count yourself out. Go to those websites, Talkspace and BetterHelp. I'll link them in the description and apply. See if you can get access to free therapy. Even if it's only 1 session or 3 sessions, it's so much better than nothing. And again, I have to remind you that, and I see this a lot with my clients and with myself sometimes, that we can get this all or nothing mentality about any sort of support we get. That if we can't get childcare every week, then what's the point? If we can't get therapy every week, then what's the point? And I have to tell you, the point is you, and the point is you getting as much help as you can get, and that is okay. So if you can only afford 1 therapy session a month, I'm telling you, it's better than nothing. And at the end of the day, therapy is about you applying what you learned outside of the session. So it's better to have therapy once a month and actually put to work what you're learning than to go every week and think that just by showing up, it's going to change everything for you when it requires active participation. So that's all I have to say about that. Active participation, don't give up, keep looking. And I'll put all the links to everything I mentioned in the description box. And I have to say that when I couldn't afford any of those options, I went to support groups because a lot of them are run by donation and it was another way to get community. And I also think the support groups offer something that therapy doesn't, which is that community and that just that sense that you're not alone, which sometimes I think can be way more healing than we realize. And the last part that I want to address here is shame. And this is real. This is something that was crippling for me for years after I had my first child. And when I was pregnant with my second, I would not allow myself a break. It was like the laundry, the dishes, work, making money, everything was more important than me. And it also was because I felt too ashamed to ask my husband to watch. You see, this is internalized patriarchy. I didn't want to ask my husband to parent our child on the weekend so that I can go take a break because I thought he needs a break too. He's been working all week. Yes, but you both have been working. And so I just wanted to acknowledge here that, first of all, it's extremely common. It's extremely common for mothers and women, but especially mothers, to feel shame and guilt when we ask for help. Because if you're a stay-at-home mom especially and you're not bringing in money, you think, I can't spend money or take time away from my family because I didn't earn money. And we just value the person who's bringing in the actual dollars because we think, oh, they're the ones putting food in the fridge and they're the ones keeping the roof over our heads. And so I'm not allowed to take a break and I'm not allowed. And I just want to say to this person who brought this up, first of all, thank you for saying this because a lot of people feel this way. I have been running this YouTube channel and my Instagram for 4 years now, and I have lost count of the number of messages from moms and especially stay-at-home moms who feel this. And I have been a stay-at-home mom who wasn't working. And I relate to this. And it got to a point where I was getting migraines so debilitating I couldn't open my eyes. I was extremely dizzy. I was almost hospitalized. I wanted to be checked into the hospital, but the doctor literally was like, this is a migraine. Going to the hospital is not going to do anything for you. He was like, you need to go home and rest. And I was like, this guy, bless his heart, does not realize that as a stay-at-home mom, I would get more rest at a bustling, hustling hospital than I would at home with my kids. But, alas, a lot of people, and particularly men, do not understand what it means to be a stay-at-home mother. So, long story short, and this is something that my therapist shared with me, so I'm not going to take credit for it, but I want to share it with you. If you're in a place where you feel that because you don't earn money, you're not allowed to take a break, this is what I want you to picture right now. And my therapist shared this with me again. I cannot take credit for this. She said, who's going to keep your kids' worlds turning, your home functioning, your brother taken care of? At the time, I was a full-time caregiver for my brother who was extremely sick. So I was caregiver and mom and running and homemaker. She's like, who's going to manage all of this? She's like, I know you're trying to save money, and that's valid and that's reasonable, and that is a good thing to do, you know, in your financial circumstance. You're trying to be responsible. But if you get so sick that you have to be hospitalized and hire someone else to do everything that you do, wouldn't that also be a financial burden to your family? And I was like, wow, she's honestly right. Because at that point of my journey, all the money I was trying to save by not taking a break, not, buying food out, not hiring someone to help around the house, not hiring childcare, not going to therapy, all that money that I was trying to save, I ended up spending it on medical bills and medicine. For real, like you heard me correctly. I ended up spending all the money that I was trying to save by not going to therapy and not hiring childcare and not getting help, I spent on medical bills. And as doom and gloom as it sounds, that whole saying, that phrase, you could either pay for illness or pay for wellness, you get to decide. I wish it wasn't true, but I'm going to be real with y'all. That has been my experience. And that doesn't mean that everything that contributes to your wellness costs money, but it does mean that our fixation on saving money by putting ourselves last and overworking ourselves is causing illness, and it's not worth it. Because, and I know this sounds kind of lofty and I'm still working to believe it, but I have found that I can always figure out a way to make more money, but I cannot go and buy a new brain or a new body at the grocery store if it breaks. I can always go and become a barista or, become a nanny. I can find a way to make money. I'm resourceful. But if I break my body or brain beyond repair, there's nowhere else I can go to get that again. Okay. And yes, I have gone to the doctor and I've been on medication. I've gone to the hospital and whatever, but it's only felt like it's patched me back up. Wellness and healing is a very inside out job. So I feel like going and getting help has helped me on the outside, but it's really been me having to acknowledge that I have been putting economic value above my own well-being. And I'm not trying to say this is a simple decision, because I feel that in our capitalistic hustle culture society, we are forced constantly to make a decision, to make a choice between feeding our family and keeping ourselves well, especially with the cost of healthcare in this country. So know that I'm not trying to oversimplify this. I'm just sharing what I know from my experience, that my therapist shed light on the fact that I was still spending the money. It was just on being sick. The next week, I think she came back and she said something else that really helped me, which was, she was like, let's do the math. How much money would it cost you if you hired someone else to do every single thing that you were doing? She's like, let's list out all the things you're doing. It was like, okay, I manage the budget. So like accounting, keeping track of our receipts, reconciling our books, basically. I clean everything. I do laundry, which is a whole separate, task in itself. I meal plan. I meal prep. I grocery shop. I make doctor's appointments. I run errands. I take care of the kids. So childcare. And that's just like 8 jobs, by the way, that I listed off. 8 different jobs. She's like, okay, let's look at how much that would cost. It came up to about $100,000. $100,000 to $120,000 for the area that I live in. If you did the math, I'm sure you would figure that out as well. And she was like, you're saving your family $100,000 by being the one who's doing everything. And she also helped me realize that while I look at my husband who worked 40 hours a week and I was like, he's doing everything, I can't ask him to help me. She was like, yes, he's working very hard. And he also gets the clock out. He also gets paid lunch breaks. He gets a whole hour every day by himself, legally entitled to an hour alone to eat and rest and recharge. He also gets to have weekends off. He also gets to interact with other adults who are incentivized to be respectful in their communication and interactions. Your toddler and your children are not incentivized to be that respectful to you, especially little kids. Like, if we're trying to be gentle parents here, our kids are not incentivized. Our kids are not incentivized to be mature people to deal with. And we're also tasked with raising these humans and educating them and keeping them healthy and teaching them how to be kind and all of these things. Whereas when you go to work, you're just responsible for getting your job done. You're not responsible for raising your coworkers. You're not responsible for teaching them how to be kind. It's a different thing. And I'm not trying to diminish what my husband's doing or what any of our partners who work outside the home are doing. And I also want to say that I was a full-time stay-at-home mom that did not work outside of the home. And I also, this past year over the pandemic, have switched roles with my husband. He's now the full-time stay-at-home parent, and I have been the working parent, the full-time working parent. And so I have to say, if anyone out there is willing to fight me in the comments and be like, well, you don't understand how hard working. Yes, I do. I have worked full-time as a marketing manager, and I know the intensity and the stress that working outside the home can bring. I also know that it requires your body and brain, but parenting requires like your body, your brain, and your soul. It takes a lot of emotional energy to raise children. And so I just want to point all of these things out because I want you to understand that number one, as a stay-at-home parent, you are saving your family so much money by doing the work that you are doing. You're not just raising the kids. Like when I looked at just the fact of like what time my husband had to be at work and what time he got to clock out versus the fact that I was waking up 2 hours before he even left for work to breastfeed my baby, and then I wasn't going to bed until 10:30 because I was cleaning the kitchen until 10:30. I was normally working 16-hour days, okay? That's twice the amount that I was working when I was working at a job, okay? So I just want to lay that out because I think that we tend to really diminish and minimize our work as stay-at-home parents, and I don't blame us for that because society constantly minimizes what we do and just expects it. They just expect it. This unpaid labor from mothers. We're just supposed to do it without question, without needing a break, without wanting to be paid, without wanting childcare. Like it's especially in America, like it's just expected of us to do this. And I think a lot of us have had enough. And so I want to lay it out for you here because it wasn't until my therapist laid that out for me and showed me the economic value of what I was doing that I really started to value myself. And I do hope that all of us can get to a point where we just take care of ourselves because we believe that we deserve it, that we deserve love and care. We deserve the same love and care that we give to everybody else all the time. But at that stage of my journey, I just needed to know that what I did had value to everybody else because that's where I was, and that's okay. It's important to start where you're at. If my therapist told me you need to take care of yourself and practice self-care because you deserve to love yourself, I wouldn't even have heard her. Those words wouldn't have sunk in. They would have just went right over my shoulder because that's not where I was. I needed to know that what I did had value because when I left the workforce to become a stay-at-home mom, I felt so not valuable anymore. I felt like what I was doing didn't matter. Every time I talked to anyone, they always asked me, what else do you do other than being a stay-at-home mom? Like no one wanted to hear about being a stay-at-home mom. It was like boring, next. Like what else do you do? And it's like, oh, that's all I do. And it's like, oh, it's like, that's all I do? I'm raising the next generation for 16 hours a day and that's all I do? I want to remind you that patriarchy is trying to tell you that raising humans doesn't matter. And it's the most freaking important job out there. And unfortunately, we're not going to find that validation outside of ourselves. We have to find it in our own communities, and it has to start with you. I want you to start valuing yourself as a parent because if you don't do it and value yourself and honor yourself by giving yourself breaks, by taking care of yourself, by meeting your wants and needs, by putting other things off the list so that you can put yourself on the list, you will burn out. You will break. And I'm saying this because I care about you, not because I want to scare you. I say this because I want to help one more mom have less burnout and less sickness than I did for the first few years of motherhood, where I felt like I was just surviving, barely surviving, constantly sick, constantly burning out. And I feel like my early motherhood could have been so much better if I had just had someone tell me how valuable what I was doing was. That therapist gave me that gift. I was already well into mothering my second child at that point. I had already accomplished about 2.5 years of mothering at that point. And I'm so grateful. I know that there's some mothers who have already mothered their children and they're out of the house maybe, and they feel really sad that they didn't hear this. So know that I'm not complaining. I'm just stating the facts that this isn't common knowledge that we're regularly hearing and discussing. And I don't blame mothers for not valuing ourselves because it's not taught to us to value ourselves. So that's what I have to say about that. I want to say thank you so much if you made it to the end of this video. If you did, can you comment melon in the comments. I love doing that to see who actually made it to the end. Ask for help, take the breaks, remember how much value that you bring. Remember not to compare your job to your partner's job. They are very different. And remember that you are helping your family tremendously by doing the work that you are doing, and you are worthy of a break and rest just like everybody else, that you are worthy of the love and care that you give so generously to everybody else, and that you are more likely to avoid that burnout and just feel more like yourself when you take care of yourself on a regular basis and not just when you're falling apart. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my channel and hit that bell icon, and you will be notified when the next video of this series is published. All right, thank you so much. Take good care. Bye.